So, to our viewers, something that is just really fun and funny about Books and Looks is that there's no mirrors around, so they have absolutely no idea what they look like in the process of it. So, as we're doing these next steps, Lesley won't know it, but she looks very scary.
Do I look like this? Like I just keep hoping.
You look exactly like the cover.
Which I'm not gonna lie, I would have been okay if I came out looking like this. So.
But and you see, in just powder just flew everywhere. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Books and Looks. My name is Kathy, and we have a very special guest, which I'm sure some of you might recognize, our technology librarian, Lesley.
Hello.
So, Lesley, you can go ahead and tell us what book you've brought for today's episode. And meanwhile, as usual, I will start to prep your face.
All right, I saw that you guys had been featuring a lot of people reviewing science fiction lately, so I wanted to kind of do something a little different for this episode. So I'm not just reviewing a horror book, I'm reviewing a book that is a graphic novel that is horror. So it is The Black Monday Murders. The subtitle is All Hail God Mammon, and it is by Jonathan Hickman. One thing that I really like about horror in graphic novel form is you tend to really get that visceral response to especially some of the gore or body horror or things like that that would be missing if you were just reading it as a bunch of text. Mm-hmm. You know, as much as I do love reading like scary books, graphic novels lend themselves so well to this particular genre.
How did you come to love horror as much as you do?
So I blame my dad. I might be ratting him out a little bit, but growing up, my mom frequently had to leave to take care of her sister. So my dad would go check out horror movies and just be like, don't tell your mom this. And now I just kind of feel nostalgia anytime I watch horror films. It's kind of like my go-to comfort food, especially if I'm sick or not feeling all that well. I guess I like to remind myself that things could always be worse.
So who else in the library shares this love for horror? Do you know?
Well, so Erlene and I are both probably the main people that talk about it. She's more of a Stephen King fan than I am. I tend to want to read everybody but Stephen King.
Why?
Because I've read some of his things, and he's really hit and miss for me.
Okay.
I like his novellas a lot, and I like some of his works that are not quite so bloated, but he does tend to succumb to falling into rabbit holes and tends to lose the plot a little bit.
Okay.
My favorite Stephen King book is Full Dark, No Stars, which is a series of 4 novellas that are incredibly powerful. When he is stripping out some of the excess fat from his stories, they're really good.
Do you have a favorite horror author?
No, not specifically, and some of it is because I like to sample a lot of different authors.
Okay.
So I feel like people become too predictable if you read too much of the same author. I kind of enjoy hopping around.
Okay, so a little bit about this author. Have you read anything from...
I have not. From Jonathan Hickman? No.
From Jonathan Hickman?
And he is really well known for his work on the X-Men series, but he has written some other standalone things that aren't under the Marvel umbrella, including...
So his genre isn't always horror?
No, it's not. In fact, he does a lot of superhero stuff, and then one of his standalones was the Manhattan Projects, which is exactly about the development of the atomic bomb, but with the whole kind of... The subtitle of that one is Science Bad. So.
Oh, okay. So he gets a little bit into history, a little bit into superheroes.
Yeah.
And so then now he's jumping into horror. That's pretty cool.
So what is interesting about this particular book is it has a very genre-bending feel to it. Yes, it is, I would describe predominantly horror, but it has a lot of elements of noir in there as well. And it's basically about the global economy, which sounds like a really weird subject to tackle in a horror story. It sounds kind of boring.
A little bit.
But it's more of a criticism on capitalism in general. So in this story, the world's wealth is mostly controlled by 4 major families. And the way they control it is through using the occult and human sacrifices to make sure that crashes occur strategically or are remedied in a timely manner.
So that they can stay in control.
Yes. So it's basically kind of talking about money and power and magic all kind of melded into one, almost like money is the earliest form of communication.
Okay.
But your main characters are, there's one woman who belongs to that family, or one of the 4 families, and she recently learned that her brother was killed. And she's not exactly surprised by this news, but now she's having to take up the mantle of power so that she can continue to control that family's wealth.
Okay.
The other main character is Theodore Dumas, and he is a detective. This is all set in New York, and he's known for using rather unconventional methods, including voodoo, to try to kind of help him solve some of the more difficult cases. So he's called in as an expert on this one because I mentioned, I didn't name her, I mentioned Gregoria was her name. The brother was found naked and symbolically arranged in a rather unusual fashion in a VIP suite that had
hence the horror theme.
Yes. And of course he's covered in these symbols, and everything in the room is set up to give a message that is really hard for somebody who isn't initiated to understand what exactly is being communicated.
Right.
So Theo starts to kind of piece together what is happening and realizes that he is basically starting to investigate the latest in a long series, centuries-long series of murders.
Interesting.
One thing I really appreciated about this, and some of my favorite horror tends to have characters that you understand from both sides, so it's still kind of up in the air whether or not Gregoria is going to use her recently inherited power for good or evil, but it is interesting because you can also tell she's coming in here for revenge. Where this departs from a typical murder mystery is you know who did it very, very early on.
Okay.
The point here is they are kind of flexing that they are powerful enough that they are untouchable.
Okay.
You're more trying to watch Theodore like piece together everything and stumble through it and realize that he's onto something much larger than a gruesome murder.
So interestingly enough, that this involves wealthy families and that it is kind of horror-based is, I feel, since you told me that you were going to come in and talk about a horror, I really want your makeup to definitely stand out, and so I thought, whose makeup stands out and just gives very creepy vibes? And what better than the wealthy family, the Addams family, and Morticia. So we are going for that kind of Morticia vibe.
And that works out perfectly because back when I was available, I no longer am, my dating profile said I was looking for my Gomez Addams. So.
Really? That is too cute.
So I always felt like they were kind of relationship goals in the weird.
No, they are 100% relationship goals. His obsession with her was just so creepy, but just like so romantic at the same time. Still, I'm sure that that kind of a Addams Family horror does not compare with the horror in
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, that's the other interesting thing about this graphic novel. The setting is really important. So you have a lot of pages where you're looking back in history at the Wall Street crash in 1929, and you're kind of following the thread of wealth in these families over time. Yes, most of it is set in the modern day, but you do have these flashbacks, and some of them aren't as action-packed as you would think, you know, a lot of horror would be. And then the other thing that's really neat about the presentation of this particular work is it is mixed media, so it includes like transcripts from some of the interviews, you see like case files and stuff like that interspersed.
Oh, cool.
Which adds a nice bit of context to everything, and it does break up, you know, because even though it doesn't have a whole bunch of super gory scenes, it makes up for it in those few pages that it occurs. So it definitely earns its imprimatur rating.
So I know that right now I'm obviously doing quite a bit of makeup because Morticia is pretty full glam, very spooky looking makeup that she likes to do.
Yes.
But on a regular basis, what do you usually do with your makeup?
So I'm going to give the answer that so many other people give right now, and that is because of COVID and because I've been back to wearing a mask again, I don't do all that much right now. Under normal times, I usually like to put on some sort of CC cream and just to kind of balance out redness and then really focus on eyes. I have a love-hate relationship with lipstick just because I feel like it gets messed up so fast that...
It does. It really does.
It feels like a lot of effort for something that's very temporary. Personally, I don't find like horror books all that frightening because your imagination can make it as gory or not gory as you want it to be. versus when you're looking at it in a movie or when you're seeing it in a graphic novel, it's a lot more in your face when things are disturbing. So as long as you don't get any graphic novels, I don't think it'll be too bad.
Okay.
Also, apparently audiobooks can be a lot more challenging. I always felt that way a little bit about romance too. I never really wanted to listen to a romance audiobook because when it gets to the more steamy scenes, I don't know, it would feel a little bit more voyeuristic.
So, since you've read quite a bit of horror, what authors would you recommend? Maybe based also on level. For,
Okay.
you know, if you know any authors that kind of give that good beginner horror for somebody who's barely first starting out, and then the authors that really bring it.
And not to sound like mean or anything, I think something a lot of people overlook is children's fiction. There are a lot of really good scary stories in the children's fiction area, where if you really are wanting to start in the kiddie pool area, you might as well go to the kiddie pool books. But there are some excellent ones there. The Screaming Staircase is one of them. I cannot remember the author's name, but it's kids who basically, because they're within a certain age range, are able to or are particularly sensitive to paranormal activity. So they are hired out through an agency so that they can help solve hauntings and stuff.
Very cool.
So that one's a really good one to test the waters with. Coraline is amazingly creepy. Honestly, I just watched that film recently with my son, and I think some of the creepy factor goes over his head, but watching it as an adult, it is a very unnerving story.
Yeah.
Another really good author to try out, especially if you're wanting something quick, is Darren Shan. He's another teen author. He wrote the Lord Lost series, or it's the Demonata series, which is an interesting one about trying to keep demons contained outside of the earthly realm.
Okay.
The descriptions of the demons and the powers and stuff like that are all very surreal and very vivid, but they're quick stories. They're all about 200, 250 pages long each. And they follow 3 different main characters, and the characters evolve in a very interesting way. So, and then from there, if you want adult stuff, the nice thing about Jonathan Mayberry is he writes for both adults and for teens. So if you decide you like the teen stuff, you can try out some of his adult stuff. And Victor Laval is another really interesting voice right now in horror. Currently on my to-read list, I have checked out My Heart is a Chainsaw. I have not read anything by the author, so I'm very excited to give him a try. And then I also have, I'm going to get the name wrong. It's the latest one by Grady Hendrix.
I wouldn't know either.
I know, right?
Because, yeah, I just could read and check if we have
or something like that. Or Final Girl Support Group. There we go.
Sorry, this look involves
you're good.
A lot of layering.
I like eye drama. It's all good. But yeah, to circle back to your question about the kind of reader this book would be good for, is somebody who likes more cerebral horror, because otherwise, if you're coming in here just looking for a slasher fest, you're going to be sorely disappointed. I tend to enjoy horror when it's a metaphor for something that's either going wrong on a societal level or, you know, I also like exploring dysfunction and stuff as through the vehicle of horror. It's so funny because you really see the lashes on yourself.
Yeah, it is. And in normal Morticia fashion, we have to do a horrific, bloody red lip.
I'm here
which
for it.
might just end up looking very glamorous.
That's also okay.
It's funny because it looks like you're smiling, but it's just like that outline of your lip. I was just like, why is she doing the triangle face? Okay, Lesley, I think your spooky Morticia themed look is complete. I can't tell if you look like spooky or glam, but I mean, Morticia is both spooky and glam. But we had to do something like this because you brought horror to the table.
Plus, I have to ask, does it match my doll?
Does it?
Bring her
I don't
in.
know. I think we'll let the audience decide. You look just alike. So, thank you so much, Lesley, for coming on the show and letting us glam you up. I know that you normally don't do all of this for work, so thanks for allowing us to drag you out here and bringing...
Yeah. The Black Monday Murders by Jonathan Hickman. It is, one thing that's very nice about it, it is only 2 volumes long. So if you're not looking for a huge commitment of a read, this is a good way to kind of dip your toes into some horror.
And it is available at our library. So the next time you come in, If you are a horror reader and want to check out a horror graphic novel, definitely pick this one up. And thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next episode. We have something super special.
I can't wait.
And super secret.
And sparkly.
And sparkly planned. So we'll see you next time.
Bye.